Statistical consequences of fat tails, real-world pre-asymptotics, epistemology, and applications by Nassim Nicholas Taleb is not merely a technical treatise on probability, it's a provocative and philosophical exploration of the limits of statistical models in the face of reality's messy complexity. The book challenges the conventional wisdom that underpins much of classical statistics and econometrics, particularly in fields where extreme events, those in the fat tails of distributions, have outsized consequences. With sharp intellect and polemical flair, Taleb interrogates how we think about risk, uncertainty, and empirical evidence in systems where rare, high-impact events dominate outcomes. The narrative opens with a dissection of what fat tails actually mean, not in the casual sense of extreme outcomes, but in their rigorous mathematical implication, power laws, infinite variance, and distributions where the law of large numbers fails us. These fat-tailed domains, what Taleb calls extremistan, behave very differently from the thin-tailed Gaussian world, mediocristan, where conventional statistics comfortably reside. Most of what society considers knowledge, economic models, forecasts, optimization, assumes a Gaussian world. But, Taleb argues, that's not the world we live in. Central to the book is the idea of pre-asymptotics, that is, the fact that real-world data doesn't behave as textbooks predict in infinite sample scenarios. Most statistical theory depends on asymptotic behavior, what happens as n infinity, but Taleb points out that in finance, medicine, climate science, and war, we almost never get close to that. Worse, the presence of fat tails makes convergence so slow that these theories become dangerously misleading. This is not a quibble about technicalities, it's about life and death decisions being made on flawed premises. Taleb uses this foundation to attack over-reliance on tools like the sample mean, standard deviation, or linear regression in fat-tailed environments. He illustrates with data and mathematical simulations how these metrics become unstable, often exploding with the inclusion of a single outlier. Averages, in these contexts, can be meaningless or even deceptive. Through vivid examples, stock market crashes, pandemics, insurance liabilities, he shows how a single event can dominate the entire statistical landscape, obliterating the typical case. The book is deeply epistemological. It's not just about how to use statistics but about how we know what we think we know. Taleb insists that empirical doesn't always mean reliable, especially when data is skewed by black swan events. He returns to the ancient philosophical debate between knowledge derived from repetition, induction, versus rare but consequential anomalies. In fat-tailed domains, he argues, the anomaly is the data. This inversion challenges deeply held scientific norms. One of Taleb's most powerful insights is that in real life, we often cannot afford to be wrong in the tails. Classical statistics assumes that errors cancel out, but in practice, a single error can ruin you. This asymmetry leads Taleb to advocate for ergodicity awareness, understanding whether the statistical model applies to time-averaged outcomes or ensemble-averaged ones. In non-ergodic systems, like personal finance or survival, what happens in the tail determines whether you get to play again. Through detailed breakdowns, the book covers tools that are more robust in fat-tailed environments, the use of medians instead of means, power law diagnostics, robust estimation methods, and tail conditional expectations. But it's not a cookbook. Taleb repeatedly stresses that technical fixes are not enough if the underlying assumptions remain fragile. He promotes a probabilistic humility. Respect for the fact that nature is wilder than our models, and that we must build systems that can survive even what we cannot predict. The middle chapters shift toward the real-world consequences of ignoring fat tails, particularly in finance. Taleb revisits the 2008 financial crisis and other collapses to show how institutions optimized for average performance but blew up in rare events. Value at risk, Black-Scholes, portfolio theory, these sacred cows of modern finance are eviscerated not as wrong in theory but as suicidal in fat-tailed practice. The seductive precision of these models masks catastrophic fragility. Importantly, the book doesn't suggest giving up on modeling. Instead, Taleb offers a framework rooted in anti-fragility, the idea that systems should benefit from disorder and shocks rather than merely survive them. This leads to a call for barbell strategies. Combining extreme conservatism in one domain with radical risk-taking in another, insulating from ruin while leaving room for outsized upside. It's a statistical philosophy that aligns with evolutionary biology more than classical economics. Taleb's tone throughout is provocative, sometimes combative, always deliberate. He is not trying to win friends among academics who prize elegance over realism. He mocks those who hide behind assumptions and error bars, urging them instead to confront the brutal, unpredictable nature of real systems. His style can be grating, but it's driven by moral urgency. People suffer when we use fragile models to make critical decisions in a fat-tailed world. The book also delves into metrics of tail risk, maximum drawdown, tail conditional expectation, and stress testing methods that don't depend on probabilistic forecasts. These tools reflect a practical shift, from prediction to preparation. Rather than asking, what is likely? The fat-tailed thinker asks, what would be ruinous, and how do I avoid it? This inversion of standard risk thinking is one of the book's most actionable ideas. Taleb closes with a deeply personal and philosophical reflection on intellectual integrity. He criticizes what he sees as the arrogance of the modern statistician, mistaking model sophistication for empirical relevance, and calls for a return to practical skepticism. He invokes ancient heuristics, ancestral wisdom, and real-life experience as superior to pseudo-quantitative illusions of control. What makes statistical consequences of fat tails enduring is not just its technical content, but its philosophical backbone. It's a meditation on humility in the face of uncertainty. It argues that real knowledge is not about precision, but survival, not about modeling what we see, but about preparing for what we cannot imagine. In this way, it transcends statistics and becomes a guide to thinking, living, and acting in an uncertain world. Ultimately, Taleb leaves the reader with a mindset rather than a formula. It's a mindset of robustness, skepticism, and intellectual courage. It demands that we build systems not based on what usually happens, but what can happen, especially when it hurts the most. And in doing so, we move from the fragile illusion of control toward the robust reality of adaptation.